What's going on, everybody? It's SJG, and welcome back to HBCU Game Day. Look, man, this has been, had to hold on to my hat. This has been a whirlwind couple of days, really couple weeks on the HBCU coaching circuit. A lot of things have changed, a lot of movement. Again, we're always talking nowadays about college basketball and the transfer portal and how these players are switching up year to year, whether or not they're actually leveling up or just switching just to be switching. Well, not only are the players in the transfer portal, the HBCU coaches are in the transfer portal. I mean, it's been some SWAC on SWAC, CIAA, MEAC on CIAA, CIAA on CIAA, all kind of, cannibalizing going on. Just the coaching circuit in general. A lot went on over the past weekend at the Final Fours, the men's and women's, coaches and ADs are there, kind of talking and filling out the lay of the land. So it's a exciting time. But look, man, we've got a lot of big news, and the big news dropped on Thursday, and that is that Florida A&M will be looking for a new men's basketball coach once again. Patrick Crarey has decided to take his talents to Grambling, Louisiana, where he is going to take over the Grambling State Tigers. Look, man, it's been this is wild. All right, let's go back a year ago. A year ago, in mid-April, Tiffany Dawn Sykes, the VP of Intercollegiate Athletics at FAMU at that time, introduced Patrick Crarey as the new head coach. And then the summer came. And his contract, which was agreed upon as a 3-year, $450,000 deal, was stalled. Meanwhile, he was sitting there putting together a team, and there was so much controversy about it. When they tried to get his contract rectified, there were, comments as far as, we don't think he was a top 5 resume. Comments as far as, he coached 2 levels below the SWAC. And then eventually what they did was they took his 3-year deal down to a 1 and finally gave him a deal, towards the end of the summer, after the fiscal year, just so many things that went on there. And then, of course, the AD change happened and everything, and he was kind of left there with a 1-year deal. The AD that hired him, was ran out of town, and here we go. And he goes and all he does is takes a team that won 6 games the years before. He goes 10-8 in the SWAC. He wins 13 games overall, has one of the best seasons that FAMU has had in a long time. Keep in mind, this is a program that hasn't had a winning season since the mid-2000s. The mid-2000s, yes. This has been one of the toughest jobs in college basketball for some time. And what he did was took it and ran with it, and they only gave it to him for 1 year. And we covered, shout out to Vaughn, he covered everything that was going on with Coach Crarey in regards of as he talked, he was there for that press conference when he talked about how he had a 1-year deal, and for some way somehow he managed to get out there and field a competitive team despite his hands being tied behind his back by the Board of Trustees. And the one thing about that was, at the time I remember feeling bad for him because I was like, man, if he had known this, he already had a job. Why not just stay at that job? But, as fate would have it, if he does a really good job, he's going to have a lot of opportunities. And lo and behold, as he starts to win games, Florida A&M, the new AD, Angela Suggs, the new VP of Intercollegiate Athletics, she did reach out and try to offer him an extension that would have turned that $150,000 salary into $160,000 in the next year and $170,000 in the next year. But that deal was, to my knowledge, never signed. And so, we come into this year earlier. Last month, we had Dante Jackson decided to take his talents from Grambling State over to Alabama A&M. And, I knew as soon as that job posted, there was going to be a lot of chatter potentially about getting Coach Crarey because, contrary to what some of the folks on the Board of Trustees over at FAMU thought about him, he was a very highly respected, very well-known coach, especially here on the East Coast, even though he had only, he had coached at the NAIA level, very highly respected. And so, it didn't take long for word to get out. I remember, talking and tweeting about him during the year, and a lot of people didn't like what I had to say, but you kind of saw that this could be what happens, if he had any type of success. And of course, he did, getting those guys to 13 wins, not quite the winning record that they would have wanted, but a big step up from where they were previously. Then you get the job opening with Dante Jackson, who just happens to be another guy who came from the NAIA level, landed in the SWAC, and all he did was build up that program and take it to heights that it had never been taken to before. So, this is the same situation of guys who are coming from small schools, who are, have something to prove, have a chip on their shoulder. And FAMU's Board of Trustees just gave him really a bigger chip on his shoulder with only giving him the 1-year deal. And so now he's going over to Grambling, and it's being reported. And as I'm talking about reports, shout out to Live for Hoops for all the work that she did. It's being reported that he has a 5-year deal over at Grambling, and we'll have to wait and see when the contracts come out to see how much he's getting paid. But I do know that there was an Indeed listing for the job, and the Indeed listing paid $230 as a starting salary. So I'm no mathematician, but $150, $230, that's an $80,000 difference. Pretty damn good, for sure. So Coach Crarey is going to be taking his talents over to Grambling State, looking to build off what Coach Jackson did and carve his own niche there. And it's just really a great testament to folks getting out there grinding hard and putting their head down. And now, FAMU finds itself in a position of trying to find a head coach yet again. We'll see how things go. Hopefully the next coach will get ample time. Again, $150,000 itself for a Division I coach is not great. There are coaches in the CIAA that make that. But even beyond that, the 1 year was ridiculous. And so it is something that FAMU is going to have to, people, folks are going to, everybody's going to want a job. It's a Division I basketball job. People are going to want that. But, they're going to have to show and prove to folks that they're serious about giving someone a chance. I suspect it'll be an easier sell with the current administration. They seem to, be in lockstep. So we'll see what happens on that end. But, congratulations, Coach Crarey, for, securing his future. Coach Jackson as well. Again, it has been quite a show, and now we have another opening in the SWAC. All right, so let's transition from the men's side and from the SWAC and go over to the MEAC. So there was a vacancy over in Baltimore, actually 2 of them, but the one we're going to talk about right now was Morehouse State University. Ed Davis Sr. was on his way out. He retired. Shout out to my guy, Kobe Simmons, who was in the press conference where he caught that during the MEAC tournament. One of the benefits of being there, so shout out to Kobe. And so, we want to talk about Morgan State. They had a job opening. Now, we do know earlier in the week that the one and only Liv for Hoops, and I definitely want to shout out Liv Antilla for all the work that she's been doing. She's been amazing. She's been really leading in this space as far as the reporting. And, everything she's reported has been crisp and on time. She does an amazing job. If you're not already following her on Twitter, I don't know what you're doing, and you might just want to create a Twitter account to follow her. But she's doing amazing work. Anyway, she, reported last week that Dawn Thornton, the Alabama A&M women's head basketball coach, was one of the people who was being considered for that job. Well, it just so happens that Coach Thornton, it might have ruffled a couple feathers, but they didn't get Coach Thornton, but they did get another HBCU coach. And, if you just heard me talk about Tiffany Dawn Sykes, the newly installed VP of Intercollegiate Athletics over at Virginia State, now she's got shoes to fill because her basketball coach, Nadine DeMond, is taking her talents from the orange and blue of Ettrick. It's Petersburg. She's taking her talents from the CIAA at Virginia State over to the MEAC in Division I at the Division I level. And she's a highly accomplished player. She played for C. Vivian Stringer at Iowa, and she ended up going into being selected into the WNBA. She's coached at a couple different HBCUs. She's coached at Hampton. She's coached at Grambling State as well. And then she had a really successful 2-year stint over there at Virginia State. And she led them to back-to-back 20-win seasons. They should have been in the NCAA tournament the year before. They got in this year, even though they weren't able to get over the hump and beat Fayetteville State on the championship game. But that just speaks to the work that she's done. And, the folks over in Baltimore had a need, and they did what, happens a lot. And they went to the CIAA ranks and found a really great coach already kind of in that area, already got a lot of the same color scheme. Makes sense to me. So we'll see what she gets done there. As far as Virginia State goes, tough loss for them, but I have no questions in my mind that they will have a strong pool of candidates for that job. Even though it's a Division II job, to be honest with you, it's better than a lot of Division I jobs, just because, not only does it have now a winning foundation, but it also has really solid resources in terms of a great basketball arena. Leadership there as well is awesome, all the way up to the president. And then also, there's just, and they also pay well. So when you put those things in perspective, Virginia State job is going to be a highly contested job, and we'll see what happens there with that position. But, that's not the only position in the CIAA that is having to be filled. But we'll talk about that in a second, because let's stay in the MEAC. Now, this news is not quite as new, but it's worth pointing to, because, again, we're talking about this HBCU coaches transfer portal that has erupted. And so we had Jermaine Woods was hired as the head coach at Norfolk State. Of course, coming from Coppin State, he is replacing Larry Vickers.
So what's next for Coach Vickers?
Man, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Junior, who was hired at Auburn University earlier this month. So, last month. So, they're going to be sad to see Coach Vickers go. He did a great job with that program, building it up and really turning it into a powerhouse. But they got a guy in Jermaine Woods who knows this conference. But not only does he know this conference, but if you look at his background, he also knows just college basketball at a high level. He's coached at a lot of Power Fives within the Division I world. So, he is going to be the guy that they're going to be trusting to come in and keep this program, at the top of the MEAC. Now, it's not going to be easy. Of course, you got Ty Grace over there at Howard University, and she always brings strong programs. They've been knocking on the door these last couple of years, so everybody's going to be wanting to beat the door down. And then you've got you've got Coach Damon, who is just getting her feet wet over there in East Baltimore. And so there is a lot of changes going on in the MEAC level as far as, what's going to be in flux. And it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out next year. But again, it's a little bit older, but we definitely wanted to acknowledge that. And then we'll go over to the Division II ranks, over to the CIAA. So Fayetteville State, they don't really have a great basketball history. They have only won 2 CIAA championships. The first one was back in the 70s, and the second one was just a couple years ago in 2022. Now, the coach that led them there, his name is Luke D'Alessio. He has a history of winning CIAA championships. He did the same thing over at Bowie State back at the turn of the century. And he took Fayetteville State from, a kind of middle of the road to bad program to, a perennial power in the CIAA. 20-plus win seasons almost every year he was there. He got to the championship game his first year, and, some guy in red and white kind of ruined that. But the next time they had a championship and had a chance to get there, he got a chance to build up that team, and they won their first championship in nearly 50 years. So, when you have that, and even this past year, even though they didn't win the CIAA, they didn't even make it to the championship game. They went to the NCAA tournament and actually won a game. So you would think his contract coming up that he was going to get renewed, but nope. Shout out to Liv for Hoops again. She put it out there that his contract had not been renewed as early as last week. He coached at the HBCU All-Star game, and on Wednesday made it official that he was parting ways with Fayetteville State. Not long after that, over in the hills of West Virginia, just over the border, Bluefield State University had their head coach resign. I'm talking about Devin Hearn. Now, Devin Hearn is a name that not a lot of people know, maybe outside of the CIAA, but he's an emerging name and one that you're going to want to take note of. So he's a young guy. He's younger than me for sure. But he's been putting in work. He played his college ball at West Liberty, and he took from there that fast-paced style that has really terrorized Division II teams all over, including HBCU and CIAA teams. They nearly beat them earlier this year, but he resigned after a 19-11 season. And at this point, you're kind of like, wait a minute, what's up? Especially how quickly the two things happened, and those inklings, those whispers were confirmed. Again, shout out to Live for Hoops. She was on it. She said that they kind of already had their candidate in mind. So when I saw that he resigned, I was like, oh, okay. So nevertheless, yeah, Devin Hearn. I'm gonna keep it real with you guys. Devin Hearn in the CIAA at a place like Fayetteville State is a problem. It's a problem. Like, Bluefield State, that program, again, when he took over a couple years ago, they didn't have a conference. They're located in the middle of nowhere. They're HBCU with PWI demographics. It wasn't sexy, but what he did was he got out there, he grinded, he found a guy in Jordan Hines that he clicked with and connected with, and who trusted him enough to play for him all of his years. And again, he kind of came into the scene back in 2024 when they had only won, I think, 7 games during the regular season, and in the second round he knocked off the defending champions, Winston-Salem State University. I'm still trying to recover from that, but he made it clear that he and his team were forced to be, they were not just going to be playing around. They were there to compete. And then this year he won 19 games, made it to the CIAA championship game, was leading in that CIAA championship game, and, made it to the NCAAs. And now he's at Fayetteville. He's at Fayetteville. That's a problem, because Fayetteville State, again, they don't have the basketball history of a Virginia Union or a Winston-Salem State or some of those programs. But what they do have is an enrollment that is really booming, and an athletic department that has taken advantage of that and really seen itself rise to the top of the CIAA in a lot of different sports. And, they've got some resources working in their favor. And so if I'm the rest of the CIAA, man, Devin Hearn in the CIAA at Fayetteville State is a scary thought. Like, if I'm everybody else, I'm really going to have to up my game, because, if I look at the type of players that he had over at Bluefield State, I mean, those guys look like some Division I guys, in terms of, just being the height and the wingspan and all of those things. You're like, how? And I asked him, I was like, how are you getting these guys to Bluefield, West Virginia? Like, no offense, but it's no South Beach, and Fayetteville State ain't South Beach either, but it's close to Myrtle Beach. And, beyond that, they've got the resources again and they've shown consistency under Coach DeLessio that, that they can get out there and mix and shake. So, a lot of, coaches like Hearn, and coaches like Julius Hodge over at Lincoln, they've brought some fresh blood into the CIAA, some fresh eyes, and it's going to be really impressive, or it's going to be really interesting to see what they're able to do to get over the hump over in the CIAA. As we saw, again, the CIAA had 3 teams in the NCAA tournament. 2 of them won games. CIAA basketball is on an ascension right now, and everybody else, they're gonna have to figure out how to measure up. There's a lot of veteran coaches in this league. Again, a veteran coach won the league this year in Lonnie Blow over at Virginia State, but again, he had to face Devin Hearn's team, and I'm guessing what he's going to be coming with over at Fayetteville State. Everybody better brace up for it. So before I slide out of here, there is another job situation that just came open today. and that bears watching, and that's over in Atlanta. Morehouse College has parted ways with their head coach, Doug Whitler. He took over the program in 2021 after the untimely passing of the legend Grady Brewer, and all he did was win more games than anybody else won in his first 4 years. Had a great winning percentage. I think he won nearly 75% of his games in at Morehouse in the SIAC. So a really strong resume that he put up those last couple of years. They haven't been to the NCAA tournament in a while, but they did get a win over Howard earlier in the year. Very visible program. So it's going to be interesting with that job because it is a Division II job. But, if you look at the way things are now, I would not be surprised, and this is purely speculation, but I would not be surprised if we ended up getting, if there was potentially I don't know if you want to say celebrity hire, but a former pro athlete that would take that job. Morehouse has flirted with the idea, and I know that there are some folks over at Morehouse that want to become a Division I program. I'm not sure if that's going to happen now with all the changes that are going on and the amount of money that it takes to be Division I. That remains to be seen. But even at the Division II level, coaching at Morehouse in Atlanta, a place that has that basketball pedigree, is going to be very attractive to a lot of people. So I would expect a lot of interest in that job, and we may see an NBA person. The AD over at Morehouse is Harold Ellis. Now, younger folks may not know him, but he was never a superstar, but he played at Morehouse and he played in the NBA and worked in the front office with, I believe, the New York Knicks as well. So, he's got his own connections that will definitely probably come into play. He did not hire this head coach. So, that can always become an interesting situation. But definitely we'll be keeping eyes on Atlanta. Of course, our folks, Tylee and Simone and all those guys are down there in Atlanta quite often. So we'll keep our ears to the streets, man. We got to figure out how to compete with Live for Hoops. But great work by her for sure. She's doing her thing. And, again, this has just been a whirlwind 30 hours. I've been covering HBCUs now for quite a while, and man, when I look at the movement the last 2 weeks within the ranks, I've never seen this before. When we're starting to see, even within the different HBCUs and conferences and divisions, some of the haves and some of the have-nots. Just to round back up with Coach Crarey, again, paying $150,000 a year for a Division I basketball coach is not going to cut it. And I know they tried to offer him more later than that, but, whoever they bring in, you're going to have to show some type of a commitment to the basketball program. And, I knew when I saw that Grambling salary, I was like, man, it just makes too much sense for Grambling to go after a guy who already knows the league. And, they can offer some resources too. But again, just like Grambling, they lost their coach to Alabama A&M. Alabama A&M, they're doing a lot right over there. So it's going to be very interesting next couple of months as we lead into it. Usually we get this type of drama with the football coaching searches and the football offseason, but the basketball offseason has been pretty good. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know, do you think which coach do you think will have the best season this year? Do you think which of the new coaches that came from an HBCU will have the best year this year? I don't know, man. This transfer portal and everything's year to year. Who knows? But I do know that these are some really solid coaches. All of the coaches that I mentioned, very solid, very, they've achieved a lot. With the resources that they've had, and I'm sure they all feel like they're going to a better situation that they can achieve more. So that remains to be seen. We'll see, but in the meantime, you guys take care of yourself, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.